Stress is something we've all heard about and we've all unfortunately experienced in some way in our lives. And I do find it to be really kind of ironic that we're in 2021 and our technology has advanced so much that we can send unmanned AI-controlled rockets to space and land themselves back again. And yet we still haven't solved the problem of stress. I find that to be kind of strange. I think part of the problem is that as a society, we haven't actually really recognized what stress truly is and how it impacts people. And I know there are so many articles, so much research on this. There are hundreds and hundreds of books written about stress. And yet stress is still here. And by stress, I'm referring to chronic stress, as in the stress that continues for such a long period of time that it starts having genuine physical effects on people. And that's the aspect I think that so many people don't recognize. So in this video, I'm going to show you how stress gradually, slowly destroys the physical and mental health. According to the Global Emotions Report of 2019, a third of the world is stressed. I think that's unbelievable. And like I said before, despite the fact that we have so much advancement in technology, it seems that we severely lack advancement in a basic human experience, which is to be at peace. And I should point out, that's a report from 2019. So imagine what it's like 2020 onwards. I mean, it's probably like 90% of the world. I don't know. I mean, we'll find out probably next year or something. So for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Rumzi and I share my insights, knowledge and experience on mental health issues because I spent the last decade recovering from multiple mental health issues, which includes depression, anxiety, depersonalization, derealization, maladaptive daydreaming, video game addiction, and more. And one of the key fundamental mental health experiences that was at the root of all of these, or at the very least was always connected to all of these mental health issues, was chronic stress. And I need to make it clear I'm talking about chronic stress, not short-term stress. It's very normal for us to experience stress. It's a part of life. And by stress, I mean when we go through periods of some kind of pressure where we experience a need to make more effort to achieve something. And so, for example, if you have a test, for example, you may feel stressed about that because there's some kind of expectation you want to meet. So a certain amount of stress is going to come from that. But usually it's temporary. When it's over, then you're not stressed and you're back into that neutral, relaxed state. This can be applied to so many things, whether it's at work, maybe there's something you have to submit, and then there's a bit of stressful period because you really have to put a lot of energy to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Once that's done, it's over. You'll go back to your neutral, relaxed state. Chronic stress is different. Chronic stress is you're stuck in that stress state regardless of what's happening. There can be literally nothing really happening, nothing that you need to necessarily do, but your reaction in your body, your mind and emotions is constantly in that stressed state. So you're in that heightened sensitivity, heightened state of awareness. That low level of fear is what you're constantly experiencing. And we're not really meant to be experiencing that. Our body and our minds aren't meant to be in that state for long periods of time. So when we're in that state for a long period of time, it starts to gradually damage us. And so in this video, this is what I want to show you. I want to show you what happens so that you can make better decisions to avoid that. What I've noticed about chronic stress from my own experiences and from observing others is that it creeps up. So you don't actually often realize that you're experiencing chronic stress until you look back or until you experience properly relaxing. And then you can see, oh my God, I was so stressed. And I think this is because it's almost like if you were in warm water and then if the water kept gradually getting hotter and hotter, so you're being slowly boiled alive, but you don't actually notice it because your body and your mind actually adapt really well if the stress or if things in your environment change just slightly over time. So it's very easy to not notice how you're actually slowly being damaged over time. How can you tell if you're experiencing chronic stress? So I think there are some very straightforward key indicators. The first one is sleep. If you're chronically finding it hard to sleep, this is usually because to sleep, I know it sounds really obvious and straightforward, but to sleep, you need to be in a relaxed state. If you're stressed, you're never really truly in a relaxed state. So although you may get some sleep, to fully sleep and have good quality sleep, you need to be in that relaxed state. So if you're finding it difficult to get good quality sleep consistently, if you're constantly for long periods of time having poorer quality sleep, that's a key indicator of stress. Another key indicator is your thoughts. Look at your thought patterns. Are you having quick racing thoughts that keep going round and around? Do you find it hard to focus because they are constantly going around and around? Do you notice that the content of your thoughts is focused on worrying about things, or looking for threats, or being concerned that something much worse could happen? That's also a key indication of stress. Now, I understand there are going to be situations where it's perfectly normal to experience that. When we're talking about chronic stress, we mean that this is happening over a long period of time, regardless of the situations going on. You can have technically a very peaceful life, but still be chronically stressed because of various things going on in your mind and your emotions. Another key indicator as to whether you're experiencing chronic stress is the tension in your body. Have you noticed your body feels stiff and tense? And this is despite maybe you're doing consistent exercise or stretching. That's usually a key indication of stress, because stress actually physically accumulates in the body and you'll experience it through body tension. If you sit down for long periods of time and you noticed your body doesn't really fully relax back into its relaxed muscular state. If you notice your muscles actually tense most of the time, if you notice your shoulders up like this a lot of the time, that is a key indicator of chronic stress. This is because when we're relaxed, our muscles relax. If you think about the times in the past where you've experienced being properly relaxed, you'll notice that movement is very easy. You don't really have to think about whether you're experiencing physical pain as much, at least from my experience. And I think this is because as stress accumulates over time in the body, because when we feel there's some kind of threat, our muscles tense up, right? So I think the repetition of that, I think it actually kind of keeps us stuck in that position. At least that's my theory. Another key indicator of chronic stress is, again, very simple. Look at how you're breathing and your heart rate. So if you notice that consistently throughout the day, for long periods of time, you're breathing quite shallow, or you notice periods of time where it feels like you weren't really breathing, as in and I don't mean like you stop breathing for a minute or two, I mean, you notice that your breathing was normal and then you notice it just stopped for a few moments and it's quite erratic. That's again, key indication of chronic stress. If you notice that your heart rate seems to be fast a lot of the time and you're not physically moving about, so there's no actual physical reason for you to need to have a faster heart rate to pump more blood around your body, that's usually a key indication of stress from my own personal experience. And finally, look to your habits, because chronic stress leads to some very compulsive and addictive habits often. So things like if you notice yourself snacking more, if you notice yourself indulging in too much video games or TV, if you notice you're drinking too much, if you notice that you're using your phone too much as well, if it's becoming an addiction when you realize you actually cannot stop doing these things. If you notice that when you experience certain emotions like stress, that like clockwork, you start using these things, you use something to escape from the stress. I mean, this is a pretty obvious one, but I think still needs to be said. Yes, this is usually a key indication of chronic stress. But another hidden one is if you notice that you're working way more than you need to. So if you have work and you have set periods of time where you need to work and you technically don't need to do extra work, but you find you have this compulsion to need to find more work to do, that's, and I'm sure you've heard the term workaholic. That's actually a thing, because like the eating too much, drinking too much, playing too many video games or TV, that's working too much is also a way to cope with stress. Why is that? Because it's simply a way to distract you from the stress. But ironically, and it's really annoying when it happens, it's quite bad. I remember what it's like for me. It actually only gives a temporary relief, and adds a little bit of stress, because then you realize what you've done at some point, or in what you were doing, you realize, oh, I've lost some level of control, so you feel bad about it. That generates some more stress. So it's only really ever a temporary relief. Another one that I've noticed people do is when you over-exercise. I mean, technically stress can lead to so many other behaviors as a way to adapt to stress, to cope with it. But I've also noticed, yeah, sometimes doing way too much exercise is another way to try to get over stress, which is ironic because exercise can be a way, definitely, absolutely, to help with stress. But if you realize it's actually not, and you keep exercising to get away from the stress, that's then when I would say it's actually becoming a problem and is probably contributing to the stress. And so you may think, okay, I do some of these things, but I'm not sure if I'm actually using them to get away from stress. That's a good thing to point out. So the simple way to know whether you're using these things in an addictive way as a coping mechanism to get away from the chronic stress is just try to stop doing these things for a couple of days, maybe a week or two, and see what happens. So let's say you think, okay, I'm using my phone way too much. And yes, probably it's because whenever I get stressed, I think I need a way to distract myself from the stress. Just turn off your phone for half a day. Try that. Or there are apps you can install. I think one I've used is called Forest. It's really good, I recommend it, where you can put a timer to not, basically makes you not use your phone. Try that for a certain amount of time. See how long you can go for. Start for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Of course, you can adapt this to other issues, like if it's video game addiction or if it's snacking too much, etc. See how long you can go for without actually doing that compulsive addictive thing. So if you notice you're snacking every 2 hours, see if you can go for 4 or 5 hours. Just keep going until you notice that compulsive feeling, because technically you don't need to snack, right? Your body doesn't need it. Technically, you don't need to play video games. You don't need to use your phone in that kind of way. I know sometimes maybe you need to obviously communicate, but if you realize you're using these things in a way that's completely unnecessary and you're giving yourself a large amount of space in not using it, and you start noticing that compulsive feeling to use it, that is a key indication that it is a coping mechanism and is probably being used to get away from some form of stress. And so how does all of this actually gradually and slowly destroy our mental and physical health? It's quite simple. If we become stressed and chronically stressed, and we start finding these coping mechanisms to get away from the stress, these coping mechanisms are building the habit of taking the path of least resistance, and it's building the habit of being compulsive and reacting to things instead of actually being present and being able to respond. And this can leak into all kinds of aspects of our lives. Chronic stress physically damages us from within. So apart from damaging sleep, which is going to affect our whole body and ability to concentrate, whenever we experience stress, our body starts producing cortisol, which is a hormone. Too much cortisol has all kinds of negative effects. One of the negative effects cortisol has is that it actually can lead to weight gain. So it is actually damaging to the body in the long run. Also, if you are relying on these bad habits, again, things like snacking, compulsive snacking, drinking too much, video game addiction, just binge watching TV too much, this is damaging to us. We know it is. It's just, it's so slow that we don't even notice the damage until maybe years and years later. I don't know what the name is. I don't know the Chinese phrase, but the English translation is death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, if I can get the actual name of it, I'll stick it up on the screen. But it's a phrase I've heard called death by 1,000 cuts. And that's what a lot of these things are. That's what stress is, where in the moment, we're fine. We're like, yep, I can handle it. I know how to handle it. I've been stressed for so long that I know how to cope with it. I know how to manage it. It's fine. But it's literally a death by 1,000 cuts because stress is gradually damaging us. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.